you know, we are the Overseas Press Club, and one of the topics that is of great concern to us is, of course, freedom to report in China. I met you in the context of the Beijing Olympics. Is there a, talk to us about you, and you've left China, you're no longer reporting there, but like everyone who follows it closely, press freedom remains a concern. I think in a way you wouldn't have thought of it at the time, but that was one of the golden eras of reporting. It was the pre-Olympic period when China had promised that reporters would no longer have minders, and you were reporting on a social phenomenon which is less, wasn't as likely to trigger any concerns. Talk to us about China today since you've left, and so how has your book been received?
So, we were always told before you go to China, there are the forbidden topics, right? The treaties, Taiwan, Tiananmen, what was the other one? Tibet. And then the other one is treaties in the F, Falun. So that was the three things, the untouchables. Other than that, you were kind of okay, maybe, most of the time. But now I think the general case is the reporting in China is, what can you report? There are a lot of things now. The space, I think it's not so bad so much for foreign reporters. We are safe. Like people ask me, for example, was I ever persecuted or well, I was safe. I have a Chinese face, but I had a foreign passport, so that helped me a lot. I was able to blend in with the local population on occasion, but I was also able to get out on occasion. And this was not the same for a lot of people. There was a Chen Zoren, one of the men who tried to find out more about the tofu school situation. He was an activist. He was sentenced to 5 years in labor camp. So the situation is much, much smaller. It's not even just reporting per se, but books. So 3 years ago, I had an offer from CITIC, which is a major state-owned publishing company, for the Chinese rights to the book. But they said, we want the rights to maybe change anything sensitive, which is very standard for, and I said, I haven't written a book, I don't know what you think is sensitive, it might be the whole book, let's table the offer and we'll talk when I'm done. Well, nobody's talking now, because in the 3 years since then, the space has tightened up a lot. And I'm very anxious for the book to be published in Chinese, because I want Chinese people to read it, because this is about them. And I want to read you a quick note I got from a Hong Kong publisher. When I wrote to her and said, hey, would you be interested in my Chinese rights, with the Chinese rights? And she said, basically, this is what, I really want to read this to you because it's...
And while you're looking that up, I will say that as many people in the room know, 5 publishers have vanished in Hong Kong and Thailand and southern China. They've been abducted. It's now known by the Chinese government, extralegal abductions. And this is obviously a topic of concern for the Overseas Press Club, but also anyone who is writing or publishing, because it means that no one is really safe, whereas we always thought Hong Kong or maybe Thailand was safe if you were...
Yeah, right. I mean, they're publishing bodice rippers. Who takes these things seriously? But eventually the Chinese government...
While you look that up, I will point out that
I have it here now.
Oh, okay. It's also the Chinese government's own fault for censorship. There wouldn't be such an appetite for bodice rippers about Politburo members if there was freedom of the press. So
yeah. Forbidden fruit always tastes sweeter. Now this is a respectable publisher. They published some very good memoirs in the past, and this person wrote to me and said, I'm sorry to say that Hong Kong is suffering from an increasingly hostile publishing environment, as you might have heard. It is not the sensitivity of your book that is the problem, but the distribution. Almost all Hong Kong bookstores are banning sales of the books that we publish. Not only the traditionally left-wing chains that make up 70 to 80% of the bookstores, but even Page One and S-Lite, which are Singaporean and Taiwanese in their Hong Kong branches. That leaves a handful of independent bookstores, and a couple of important ones, including the Causeway Bay bookstore, closed down in the past month. Without good local distribution as our base, we face an uncertain future.